Sunday evening, everybody. Urav Desai here with a tropical weather update for October 21st, 2018. I know it has been quite a while, but there really has not been much to talk about over the past few days. However, that has changed now as we do have a major hurricane in the East Pacific, Hurricane Willa. We do also have Tropical Storm Vincent just to its south and east. However, in the Atlantic, it is staying relatively quiet for today. If we look at the 5-day outlook, you can see no new cyclones expected at all in the Atlantic for the next 5 days, so it is going to remain quiet. But if we do look at the East Pacific, we do have an area with a 10% chance of development, but that's far away from land. But what will be impacting land is Hurricane Willa, and we do also have, again, Tropical Storm Vicente. It's a weak tropical storm now, only at 40 miles an hour. And looking at Vicente, you can see that the satellite presentation has definitely deteriorated over the past several hours as it's getting sheared apart from its north and west by the much larger Hurricane Willa. And it's barely hanging on now. It's only a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm. The thunderstorm activity is mostly escaping the center of circulation now. And looking at the 5-day cone, you can see it's forecast to degenerate into a depression by Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And it is forecast to make landfall on the Mexican coastline Tuesday afternoon, but it will only be just a depression, and it'll probably just be bringing some light rain showers to that area. But now looking at the main story, Hurricane Willa is now major hurricane, a Category 3 with winds of 115 miles an hour. So it just recently has been upgraded, and as you can see, the eye has just popped out. It's still pretty ragged, but the eye will be continuing to clear out and round out as it is forecast to further intensify. And if we do look at the 5-day track, you can see it's forecast to remain a major hurricane all the way up until landfall on the Mexican coast. And you can see we do have hurricane warnings, or hurricane watches rather, up for the area, which will probably upgrade to warnings pretty soon. We also have tropical storm warnings further south and tropical storm watches further north. And look at the forecast discussion. You can actually see that it is forecast to peak at a 150-mile-an-hour Cat 4 hurricane, strong Cat 4, but it's forecast then to weaken slightly as it will probably be undergoing an eyewall replacement cycle, and it will be interacting with some more dry air and some shear, but it is still forecast to make landfall at around 125 miles an hour. So it's definitely going to be a very serious situation for the Mexican coast. It's going to be some life-threatening storm surge, some flooding, and some very strong winds associated with the system. So I hope that the residents in that area are prepared. And looking at the track models, you can see that all the models are in agreement that this thing is going to be making landfall within the next 48 hours or so. And for the intensity forecast, the majority of the models at least have it maintaining its Category 3 strength. And a lot of them also do have it approaching Category 4, even up to the point of landfall. So again, this is definitely going to be a very destructive storm. And I hope that that area of Mexico is ready for this system. And now looking at the Atlantic, for where we are right now, it's October 21st, so we just passed this October 20th line. This chart does show number of storms per 100 years, hurricanes and tropical cyclones. And as you can see, of course, we did peak back around September 10th, and we just passed this mini peak, which occurred around October 10th to 15th, and that was when we had Hurricane Michael, of course. But now things are starting to wind down for good. We might get a little bit of blips here and there. Might get one more, maybe two tropical cyclones at the most. But apart from that, this season is definitely winding down very quickly as we do approach the end of the hurricane season. The official end is November 30th, but we can get storms after that. But the likelihood of impacts to land does decrease once you get to that point, however. So hopefully we don't see any more storms, as we definitely don't need any more storms. That would be some great news if we don't get any more development. But if we do look at the next 5 days at least, you can see on the European model that there is not any forecast for any new tropical cyclones to develop. We do have a low pressure just north of Panama, but that's probably going to move inland before it does get to develop. And we do also have a low pressure just south of the Florida Panhandle region around day 5, but this is most likely going to be a non-tropical cyclone, but there's a chance it could form into a nor'easter, which I will talk about shortly. And if you look at the GFS, it does show a similar situation. Relatively quiet tropics for the next several days. It does have the low pressure, non-tropical, however, low pressure in the Gulf Coast around day 5. And now looking at our radar over the region currently, you can see for much of the northeast, actually the whole northeast, and for even areas further west and south of that, the entire U.S. is really looking pretty devoid of any rain activity. We do have some slight showers in the southwest region, the desert southwest, but apart from that, it's looking very dry. Some much needed dry conditions. We did have some rain earlier today, but it did move out of the region, which is definitely good. But if we do look at the next few days, you can see that there is a chance for some isolated rain and some isolated snow showers for areas of northern New England, and also for areas of New York and upstate New York especially. Could be seeing some pretty decent snow amounts, as we will be getting some lake effect snow for that region, and the snow does linger around for some areas of Vermont, New Hampshire through day 4 through Thursday, and then it does dry out for Friday. But we do have that nor'easter, as I mentioned, is forecast to be forming. We do have a pretty sizable low pressure. We're talking about 970 millibar low pressure just off the New Jersey coast. This would be around day 7, so this is pretty far in advance. But most of the models are in agreement that there is going to be some kind of a coastal storm next weekend. It would probably be making its closest approach around late Sunday night into early Monday morning. But again, it is still kind of early to tell. But the GFS does have it probably making landfall around Cape Cod, around Nantucket Island. Again, a pretty sizable storm, pretty strong system. And there would be quite a bit of rain and quite a bit of wind associated with this, and also even a chance for some snow in areas further north on the back end as it does start to pull away from the region. And now looking at the wind model, this is still the GFS, but this is the wind speeds in knots, not miles an hour. And now you can see it does start to form. And this will be some pretty hefty wind gusts, actually, if we do zoom in into the region. There's actually some sustained winds, I believe. And so we could be seeing, based on these purple colors and the reds, we could be seeing some wind speeds of 40 to 50 miles an hour. That's tropical storm strength, as that equates to around 60 mile an hour or so. We could definitely be seeing some pretty strong winds here. Definitely some power outages are possible, especially along the coast of Massachusetts and other areas of coastal New England as well. And also a lot of the leaves will probably be falling off as the wind is probably going to take those leaves off, especially those leaves that have already changed colors. And now looking at the European model to compare, though, the European model does show a coastal storm as well, but it does have it further inland, and so it does not intensify as much. It has only a 995 millibar pressure, which is still pretty decent. And as you can see, it does still have some pretty decent wind gusts around the region, with possibly some wind speeds around 40 knots, which would be probably around 50 miles an hour. So there's still a possible wind threat associated even on the European model. It's definitely going to be a big rainmaker for coastal region especially as well. And all of this really depends on what's going on with the trough. And as you can see, we do have two forms of troughs: a positively tilted trough, which is what you typically get, and a negatively tilted trough. As you can see, a negatively tilted trough does has a northwest to southwest orientation. And with negatively tilted troughs, you usually get a higher chance of thermodynamic instability, and that does lead to a greater chance of severe weather. And for example, we did have the negatively tilted trough. That's what we had when Hurricane Sandy came in 2012, as it did allow for Sandy to further intensify and increase in speed, in size rather, and it did lead to Sandy making the sharp hook west and into coastal New Jersey. And so if we do look at the upper air pattern, the 500 millibar geopotential height from the GFS does show a close situation, a close scenario to negatively tilted trough. As you can see, it does have the trough starting to come down around day 6, around Saturday. And it does almost start to phase, as you can see. Right now, it's basically north to south orientation with the trough, but it is getting close to that point where it does start to tilt negative around Sunday night into early Monday morning. So there's definitely the possibility that this thing does phase into a negative trough. And if it does so, then there's definitely the potential that we'll see an even stronger system, and even a system further west as well. And that'll definitely be causing some pretty damaging winds and some heavy rainfall for the Northeast region for next weekend. So stay tuned for more updates. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching.